production, if it's sort of running for a long period of time, isn't done until 3 months or so, or until you have lots of audience members coming through. But so that's the thing too, is knowing that testing never ends, even when it's open. The goal is, I think, for anything that opens as a commercial product, that
Right.
people get their money's worth, as an audience member, that people that you don't know have paid for a ticket and feel like they've walked away satisfied, even if you're still making tweaks, but they feel like they got a whole experience that was worth the value of the ticket.
And you're a part of a group called AOTW. Can you tell me a little bit about what you do with AOTW and how it aligns with your with experience design and your passion there?
Yeah, so AOTW stands for All of Them Witches, and it's a collective. There's 7 of us who sort of work together. We were match made in 2018 to do this sort of super experience for a horror film festival in New Orleans, where we did a 4-day long, very intricate immersive horror experience. And all of us come from different forms of media and backgrounds, but we also have a foot in immersive and in sort of experiential storytelling. And so it's made up of a producer named Molly Elfman, a TV and film writer named Eva Anderson, a theater director and theme park designer named Eric Hoff, and then a collective, a trio of 3 director, producer, immersive theater creators who are also filmmakers too, called E3W, and they are Erin and Austin Keeling and Natalie Jones. So all 7 of us are sort of this collective that have one foot in writing, creation, experiential storytelling of some capacity, but also have our own disciplines. So after we got along so well, we decided to keep working together,
Mm.
and we decided to keep making work. That was sort of whenever we had the opportunity, we all had our own jobs, and this was a chance to make work for ourselves, where we were the clients producing for us the work we wanted to see in the world, the work we couldn't do with our regular jobs. So more experimental, sort of darker narratives, taking risks, and to me, things that are really, really valuable that we could learn and pass on both to our day jobs and also to the industry, to be able to talk about like this. Most of us
Nice.
work on jobs that have NDAs. And so the fact that we can make work that was experimental and talk about it and share with people, it just, there's something, and I'm sure you can relate, where you spend a long time on a project and it never sees the light of day. It
Yeah.
never sees an audience. And it's a little bit soul crushing because you make work hopefully for other people to see and to be able to share that experience. And so for us, it could guarantee that at the very least, if nothing we else make, in our individual jobs sees the light of day, or you spend 5 years on a project and you kind of want that immediate reward, we knew that the projects we make were going to be released. We could see audiences enjoying them and get that sort of sense of producing work that actually is getting realized.
Well, one that I'm super intrigued by, and it's one of your more recent works, is The Shape of Night. So, fans here watching, take a look at The Shape of Night.
Meet me tonight in dreamland under the silvery moon. Meet me tonight in dreamland where the sweet roses bloom.
It was like a dream. All the lights were
Come with the love light
in this dreamscape now too. I can hear beats
your
of songs.
dear
I had this dream that I was a vampire.
At the end of the video, they would walk across the side instead of
You know, Christmas, the
dreamy dream. Let's find come
So that was The Shape of the Night. We produced it in November of 2023, and it was sort of a long gestating project that we had wanted to make a bigger version of. We had the opportunity to make something that was sort of a smaller vertical slice of this larger piece. And one of the things we realized in designing a much larger piece was the bigger the budget, the longer the run, the more vulnerability you have as a economic project. You have to run for 6 to 8 weeks. You have a ton of triple, quadruple casting. You have to basically live at this venue, and just the logistical hurdles of producing that kind of work in LA is tricky. So we had the opportunity to do a smaller version of it and experiment a bit more. That we weren't necessarily doing a proscenium style show where you have these pulses of people, and we're just like, can we try a different model? Can we try to make it more of a party that runs for 4 hours and that is, a little bit more decentralized in how it operates, where it's not a proscenium thing where you have people pulsed in groups and the show's 45 minutes. So it was kind of cool to recontextualize a space. So we had this amazing space that sadly we were the last thing to use the whole space of before it got ripped down
Oh,
in Koreatown in Los Angeles called Monk Space. And it was this beautiful space that had sort of these multiple buildings that had been connected over the years. And so it felt kind of dreamlike because you turn a corner and you don't really quite know where you are. And so the space has nooks and crannies, large open spaces, smaller ones. And I love that for producing immersive work because you're able to create large scale spaces for group activities and group events, but also you can create these really intimate spaces where only a few people can go and you can have these nooks of discovery. And then the framework of the show was it's about dreams and the idea of at a certain point, you as a character in the world, and you weren't having to play anyone but yourself, but you were basically falling asleep and exploring the world of dreams. So in the opening space, there were a chance to buy drinks and just hang out with friends in sort of a fun environment. We had some characters in that opening space that sort of represented the super ego and the ego, and that were sort of there representing sort of the fun parts and the really heady parts of the brain. I played the super ego character. And then at a certain point, the world would open and you could begin going to explore the different parts of the dream world that were darker. One was related to nightmares and sort of darker spaces. And so because it was dreams, it was abstract. You could create and explore in these environments and add to them. And we had performers who were sort of playing universal or dream archetypes, wandering around the space, affecting different parts of it and coming out to the main space and being able to perform in different ways. So the reason we designed it this way is there was no wrong way to engage.
mhm.
Outside of you as an audience member being abusive or doing sort of things that were sort of antisocial, outside of that, there's no wrong way to engage. You could go and deep dive, and we had mysteries and deeper sort of puzzly type things to go and solve that would expand your understanding of the world and give you deeper connection to the characters in the world. Or you could just go hang out and take photos in the spots. We had interactive challenges to go do. We had different sort of soundscapes you could listen to. We had a tarot reading from one of our producers who was giving readings and crystal readings, and so this beautiful hut. And you saw some of the magic that happened in that video. So essentially, it was kind of a party, and there was no wrong way to engage. And what we found was people often stayed all 4 hours.
Nice.
We made this content that you could dip in and out. You could stay for an hour, get a drink, hang out. That you never even had to go into the dream world if you didn't want to, but it was accessible how you wanted. And we found that people loved being able to do a couple of different things. We have audience members that came in and only drank and only hung out, sort of walked around, enjoyed being in a cool environment with friends. We had people that sampled and kind of went and saw every scene, went and saw every character, did a couple of the deeper activities, and then they felt they got sort of a larger collective sample. And then we had people that only focused on the deep dive, that came and spent hours doing everything.
Did you see
And
that they came back for like, did they return, those that did the deeper dive, or they stayed and then that they felt like they had the full narrative in that one
the hope was
experience?
I don't like making stuff that requires multiple visits.
Mhm.
Even if you do have more content than you can, pull out from one visit, I want people to feel like they had a complete experience. So in my mind, you could in theory do everything, and a lot of people did do it in one session. But we did have people come back. And that to me is the highest compliment when
Yeah.
people come back with someone new.
What do you think drew people to return?
I think we created an environment that was intriguing,
Yeah.
that was accessible, where people felt like you couldn't do it wrong. And to me, that's super important in work to create a platform where you can have, the different types of audiences that want to engage. The people that have never been to a show before and they feel like, okay, cool, I kind of get it. They have the time to sort of warm up and acclimate to it and feel like, okay, cool, I push myself to try something new and I feel comfortable. All the way to the people, like I said, the deep divers that wanted to explore every
Right.
nook and cranny,
And
and that everyone feels welcome.
how
You know,
does this one compare to Stash House? So, like, I'm curious as
oh,
you look across your different experiences you've designed, What stays
Yeah.
constant and what do you evolve and change?
Stash House is a brick and mortar, a permanent escape room.
Mhm.
It's been pretty much the same game for the past 7, 8 years. So it's private groups. You book a game, you go in with your friends, and for the next 90 minutes, that space is yours to play through. So it's more of a traditional escape room, and it nothing changes. We do have people come back too because again, it's not intended to be replayed, but people because there's so much content,
Yeah,
because we had a big space to play with, we designed a game that was basically a 2-hour game in this space that we're able to get down to 90 minutes, and we use every nook and cranny of that space. And so we realized, oh crap, the game is too much content for an hour, and so people go in and they spend a lot of time with it. So yeah, we have photos of it up. You can see now, but the space is surprisingly large. That is only a fraction of the space that is available for players to explore, but it starts out looking like a traditional drug dealer's apartment. And then as you unlock and discover more things, every space kind of makes the space grow and feel different. Every space is decorated and designed to feel visually and emotionally different from the ones you found before. So it's this sort of space you keep unlocking and exploring and are surprised by the architecture of the space. But that was a very traditional escape room, and economically, escape rooms are sometimes seen as having a harder time expanding or growing because they have a very clear ceiling into the number of guests you can have at once. One group at a time, and they take up the entire room. Some
mm,
games or companies have tried to do pulse models where you spend 10 minutes in the first room, but that's kind of tricky because now you're forcing people to leave a space behind after 10 minutes. And what if they haven't done or solved everything at that point? They're forced ahead, and it kind of can feel bad. And then they're like, well, no, we'll call it a score system. And who really plays for score? A lot of people want to play for the narrative or discoveries. So it's tricky when you're trying to balance the economics and the quality of the experience. And in my mind, I know a lot of companies will choose economics, but for me, I never want the customer to feel rushed
yeah,
or compromised in the name of the format or model. So for me, it's like, yes, we probably will make a lot less than if we'd cram people in and every 10 minutes go to the next space to make it more of a linear experience. But for me, I'd rather create something that I want to experience because being a customer to me is very important. I play a lot of stuff and I know what it feels like to be pushed through something. So I
right.
want to make sure people don't feel pushed through, that when you have the space. So that was what was so cool about Shape of the Night was here we could have a ton of people at once. And as a model, it really worked because there was no single room you were inhabiting. You could explore the whole space the whole night.
So
And
and it
we
seems like
found that that
both of
also
them
worked. So
it seems like both of them have, like, a seamless narrative that pulls people in, depending on the flow state of how many you have, like, it sounds like a lot with Shape of the Night and then a certain amount with Stash House. When you're designing an experience like these 2, what's the first step you take in ensuring you're designing for the audience? Like, does the story come first, or do you think about the audience and the flow of the audience in that space?
it depends on the project. For
Mhm.
client work, I'll always start with the logistics and the stuff they give me, which is usually who are they designing for? What's the intention? Usually there's a logistical thing like budget and thinking about the environment or the location. And then that's so usually how client work begins. For the work I do personally and the work I do with AHW, we approach it very differently where it's very much story first. And obviously, you know, when working with client work, story is super crucial to make sure that the experience is high quality and nails it. But often they start with more of the logistical stuff. But for us, I think it's really cool to start with a sort of what if. What's a cool verb that we want to do? What's a thing we want guests to do? Or how do we want them to feel? What's an environment we want to create? Um, E3W, part of the contingent of our team, they produce immersive work that's beautiful, and they have just hundreds of boxes of these amazing artifacts and props. And so sometimes they'll just pull stuff out and go like, here's some stuff we can use. And so it's kind of like finding any inspiration point from a cool visual and letting that map out. So one of the characters that we had for the show was a three-faced sort of bureaucrat, and that was the character I played. I wanted to be a character. At this point, a lot of people know me in the space, and I didn't want that to distract them. And I know people can separate performer from role, but it's also, psychologically, my wife would know that's me. So I wanted to make a thing where I could have friends come and interact with this character without feeling weird that it's like, we really know it's Tommy. So I had a mask that was three faces. I had this extravagant costume. And in my mind, visually, I had this visual in my head of, okay, I want these really big stamps and I want to stamp people's papers. I don't know why, but I just love that. And then like the view should be like a Victorian or like a kind of older desk. And I want overflowing with paper. And so my
Yes.
whole section was just boxes of paper, reams of paper sort of flowing out against the wall, documents, and sort of like a Terry Gilliam style space. And then I was like, okay, also people are going to recognize my voice. So I will make it fun interaction wise, but we'll have no talking. So I had a big sign, and when people would come up and talk to me, I would look at them, and then they'd talk to me, and I'd wait for it. I would point to no talking, and then they go, "Oh," and they'd be taken aback, and then they look, and there were these mountains of notebooks on the page or on the table, and these sort of the pens you see in banks that are attached to chains, and they'd pick up one and they start writing to me, and I would respond with a stamp. And I had a bunch of stamps that said like yes, or like they didn't say, they had like a check mark and an X. And so I'd communicate with them that way. And then if they wanted to go on a quest, I would give them sort of a bureaucratic form to fill out with sort of surreal like riddles and questions that were meant to be humorous and sort of set up the dream world. But then there are these visuals they had to go explore, and the answers were always drawings. They would not write text back to me. They would make a drawing when they'd solved or gone to the deep part and figured out the answer. And so it's always a drawing. And so they come back with three visuals, and then I would stamp them approved or not. And it was fun to have this mechanical noise, this action of like clunk clunk, and then turn it back and they'd look and see, oh, it's approved. And getting people to play along. And what's amazing is seeing people that were deep in it would watch new people come up and talk to me. And they would have this inevitable wait for them to go through the journey of no talking. And then
Yeah.
the journey of like, oh, writing and the discovery of engaging with this character. And so I created this sort of, yeah, he was difficult. He was very bureaucratic. And it all began from the visual of the cool. I want these different requirements. I want the audience to not know it's me, or if they do know it's me, they don't care. And I want forms and paperwork. And then it's really about thinking about how to play all that together. One of the issues we did have was backup of line. And that's something I should have anticipated. But I
Um,
then had to figure out ways to sort of accommodate by having, okay, we have to have 3 points where people can stand up. I can sort of service the stamping faster.
mm,
And we sort of changed the show a little bit by me readjusting that space because we had backups of lines. But that was part of the
so
process of
good.
like, cool, don't know what's going to happen, but we adjust it. But it all began from that moment and just sort of spiraled from there.
I love that you have that personal connection with your audience. And, speaking of live actors, is that kind of one of your special sauces that you often design experiences with live actors, or it depends?
It depends. Like I love, love, love performers. There are some amazing, amazing directors and creators who I've had the privilege of working with and learning from, and just seeing the work they do and seeing how live performers, especially like amazing ones, where you have that trust. I think with immersive work, it's really helpful to have a stable of people you work with, where you have a shorthand. And so in LA, I'm very spoiled that we have several dozen actors that sort of as a collective and for client work I've hired over and over and over again. And what's amazing is you can just communicate to them in shorthand and say, here's the setting, here's your character, here's your backstory, let's role play and get into the world a little bit. And then you can let them loose and you can trust that they will nail the important bits, guide the audience to what needs to be done. But also, if someone asks something you didn't prepare for, they're going to be able, you can trust them to have the training to be able to guide them back. I think those moments are especially powerful and magical. However, yeah, you can't always have performers. And so to me, it's about taking the DNA of why do I love actor-driven work? What are the magic moments? And is there a way to take that kind of moment and use a replacement to give that feeling if you don't have a live performer? So it's a matter of, okay, can you personalize it in some way? Can you
Mhm.
give people some chance to have an impact on the story, even if there's not a performer, or an impact on the space? So it's really thinking about what people are looking for, which is being seen and heard, being validated, and then having some kind of impact back on the piece, even if it's just a shallow surface level thing, but they're feeling they're being heard and seen in some way. And so to me, it's always about that going back to that DNA of what does the audience want? And people sometimes just want to be seen and heard and
Right.
want to have an impact on the thing they're experiencing.
Well, speaking of being seen and heard, we see you, audience, and would like you to be involved in the conversation too. So, we I would like you to hear your thoughts on a particular Mentimeter question. So we're going to post it here, and the question is what other platforms would you like to be engaged with more? So take a moment to share your ideas with us using the Mentimeter link on the screen. And we'll dive into your responses as we continue this conversation. So let them scan that QR code for a moment, Tommy, and see. We've talked about like kind of live performers. We've talked about escape room style, more open-ended types of experiences, where it sounds like audiences have a lot of different choices of direction. Um, let's kind of move to current trends and innovation, and kind of look at the current landscape of immersive media. Are you excited about any particular immersive media or emerging tech right now that you would want to include in your designs?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of really cool stuff out there right now. So to me, I'm a tech skeptic in a lot of ways, even though I love tech as a hobbyist. Because to me, when you're making something, you it's one thing to play with it, but another thing when you put it into an experience, to me, it has to work. And there's nothing greater than putting something in front of an audience and it sort of falls apart. So to me, it's like now I think we're getting a point where you're starting to see really cool pieces. I think VR is finally getting to the point of stability where you can make really amazing work that is consistent for the average. So you don't need to have a huge firm helping you produce work. I've seen some amazing solo developer work with VR pieces that sort of mixed reality or live action hybridization with VR. And I think the Quest, is a marvelous piece of hardware that I'm excited to see develop more because, you know, taking on and off a headset can be very clunky in an experience. As much as I love the Void and Dreamscape and location-based VR, the fact that they never designed in world that process of putting on the equipment. And I think we're getting to the point where it's finally getting small enough and easy enough to adapt, fold it into a story, put it on, and have it be meaningful to the experience. I also love haptics a lot, everything from haptic sound to haptic tactile surfaces. I think it's really cool to surprise people. Tech that can do something sort of magical, where people are like, how'd you do that? And being able to fold those pieces into larger traditional pieces and have these magic, like with Disney, you have these magical moments that fall in. Like, how did you do that? So I think
Mhm.
we're finally able to start seeing some of those elements of magic really pop in. And then also seeing the way gamification is able to drive behavior in spaces. I love there's a company called Bodeborg in Boston. It's been around for a long time, but finally seeing the idea of making a large, huge space that has lots of games or narrative experiences, the way Meow Wolf is really playing with gamifying their narrative. And to me, it's really about using the tech and using these spaces to, in my mind, not make an experience that's just for one type of audience. I love escape rooms. I've played hundreds, but to me, I also know that that's for a very particular type of audience. So doing work that is accessible to, the type of people my parents are, or
Mhm.
the type of people who may not go to an immersive show, but feel like this is a great gateway drug. But at the same time, you're allowing and enabling customization through, again, some kind of AI onboarding system that can accommodate different types of audiences and make it where people feel welcome. That's what I see with this as tech now, with everything from AI to sort of interactive sensors that can even detect your audience or like your engagement level and being able to adjust the performance and how difficult the thing is. To me, it's like variable difficulty is a cool thing that we're finally seeing meaningful progress on. So to me, it all comes back to accessibility. It's how do you make the audience feel that they're allowed in the space, that the story is something they can engage with appropriately, and they don't feel pandered to or lost or confused, and it sort of accommodates them. And I think we're at this point now where that's really able to be done on a larger scale.
Yeah, I know that one of our experiments we did at Texas Immersive had a VR headset and we had lines issues like you had to adjust for. So then we were trying to figure out how do you actually encourage people to put the headset on, but not everyone needs to do it. And so could
Right.
there be screen casting where other people are watching and interacting? So we have a cross-platform experience, and then the choice of being in the headset becomes like what we would do with live actors of having that one-to-one moment, that kind of personalized takeaway,
Mhm.
which I think is interesting. Um, you've talked about your collaboration that you're doing, and I have two questions. One, you talked about gamification. So I have to ask this question is like, are games and immersive experiences one and the same?
No, I don't think so. I think games can be a subset, but there are games that are absolutely not immersive. But
Hmm.
to me, I always will prefer ones that do try to immerse you in the world. There's a quote that I love sort of pulling up from a Nordic art designer that everything is a designable surface.
Mm.
And that comes from the LARP world, but I think it's easily applicable to anything that you're making, even products. And so I always am a fan of, if you're making something, having the product itself, even the unboxing aspect of it, the rules, the packaging. To me, it's like even just a basic game can still immerse you in that world of the game and make it feel even more special and magical. So to me, I think, games don't have to be, but I love it when they are.
Yeah, and I love, like, the game design principles have been incorporated into immersive experiences, which actually
Right.
are hooks into engaging an audience, right? Making them feel like they are involved and participating. What you've done is very interdisciplinary, and it just sounded like from even the team that you shared that you're involved, you've got very different backgrounds. Can you talk a little bit about your collaborative process and what each person brings to the table?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because it really is a bigger representation of sort of how I do work, because I can work with, as my own sort of entity and come into a project, do everything, but I really like collaboration. I think for me, being challenged, having ideas the way you riff, and just the same way that a lot of people working together to solve a problem often solve it faster, to me, collaboration is that process of trying to problem solve, of creating something that works, and going through that sort of process of how can we really make this the best possible experience in this possible format. So for me, we're approaching it from a sort of a I think creative ideal, but also a practical way. There's 7 of us, and most projects can't physically get all people in a project in a room at once. So
Mm,
typically, we'll meet for a project, we'll get sort of all on the same page of the intention, and then the goal will be, okay, who's going to go off and do the first pass? And
mm,
so someone will go take a first crack at a story beat sheet or something that sort of summarizes what the team wants, sort of like a vision of the beats of the story. And it can be anything from both obviously the narrative, but also any execution ideas, any character ideas. And then one or two people from the team will work on it and then share it with the group. And then we'll all make notes and give feedback. And then if anyone feels, hey, I want to take a crack at this myself, we'll sort of let that happen. And then once we have sort of the framework of the piece in a good shape on paper, then it's like, okay, how do we now take the individual aspects of what we do from like, okay, what interactive elements are there? Thinking of that and designing that kind of space separately and integrating back in the script. And then thinking about, okay, cool, what's the lighting? What's the sound? What's the media aspect? Are we having any tech pieces to it? How do those incorporate? And so it's taking that sort of common ground we've established together, both individually and as a whole, and then now executing on that. And then it sort of goes through that process where now we're building it and now we're rehearsing it. And so all of us have the ability to lead. And even if there are people leading the directing or the producing, all of us sort of have a say and give notes. So, the idea is that we're all bought into the pieces and supporting it in a way that's like, cool, we're all having this sort of vision we agreed to and coming back to that common ground of like, cool, is it executing on that? And there is no ego in that space. We're
mm.
all producing work that we're all proud of. And I think to me, it brings out this element of trust that we do trust each other and knowing that these notes and things that are coming out are coming from, I trust that you're all going to execute at this level. Here's my notes of how we think we can do better. And then coming to that agreement. And I think to me, it makes us all better creators to have that.
Well, I love to hear you share about the importance of trust in a team and in a collaboration because I feel like we're coming full circle to getting audience involved. In that, in a sense, we have to trust them as well to be part of the story. We're letting go of some of our control in order to have a different relationship. So, Tommy, I just want to thank you so much for sharing your fascinating insights into your process and how you collaborate with others in the overall landscape of immersive experiences. Let's check in with the results from the Mentimeter that we posted and see what platforms that maybe it will inspire you, Tommy, and your
I'm
team
excited to see it.
to see what's interesting. So, oh, okay. So what do we see here? Hold on, I'm just lost my screen. Let's just comment on here. It's oh, I can't really read it. Can you read
I
it?
can't read that. Nope.
Let me just check with the group here. What does it say? Oh, podcast, speeches, customized AI, virtual production, music. Oh, have you done an
Ooh.
immersive experience sound experience?
I actually, yes. there is a thing I worked on for YouTube. At the end of 2021, there was a sort of interactive thing called Escape 2021. They had moved on from a thing called YouTube Rewind, and they wanted to make something that was more interactive that sort of summarized the year. So they wanted to make sort of what would be if YouTube was playable. So there were a lot of trends that sort of they'd given us to research and go through. The team we were working on, and one of the things was music was really it's obviously really important to YouTube and music videos. And at that point, Olivia Rodrigo's "Driver's License," the song had been really popular on the platform. And so one of the big things we were talking about was how do we do something that is we're not obviously going to get the performer to sing live, but I'm like, what if we find a way to let people remix a song on the fly?
Fun.
And so people got to vote on the style or genre of it at different points, creating a specialized remix of the song sort of in real time. And so
Mm.
it shifted from like the bluegrass version to like the punk version to the new wave version of this one song. And it was really cool seeing audience participation and like voting and people rooting for these different versions of the song and seeing how they blended together and giving people that chance to do that live was really, really cool. So I love music, especially being able to take elements of it and letting people remix it and sort of make it this collaborative experience.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, there's some questions here from the audience. So one person has asked, how are you bringing immersive into the streaming platform Dropout? What are you most proud of overcoming with the limitation of pre-recorded production content? Did we lose Tommy? Uh-oh. So while Tommy logs back in, I will share with you a really quick immersive experience I heard about music, since music was the highlight for our Mentimeter. I think one of the best music immersive experiences I've had was actually in LA, and it was an opera done while traveling. You actually moved between cars in order to move between scenes of this opera that was on the go. I don't know if many of you have actually heard that, but let's see if I can remember. I'm trying to remember like what the name of it was. Opera immersive experience. It was a while ago. Hopscotch Opera is the one that I'd encourage you guys to go check out. A really disorienting ride, and it was 24 different car journeys that you could jump between, which is super fun. Have we gotten Tommy back? Oh, he's loading. Okay. Well, Tommy is loading. Why don't
I'm back.
we? Oh, you back? Okay, great.
Sorry, the Wi-Fi went out. I'm so sorry.
No worries. No worries.
So
So
the question that I'd heard was about Dropout.
yes, Dropout. Exactly.
So Dropout is an incredible network that I was a fan of before working on, and I'm just super lucky that someone recommended me to Sam on a project he was looking for. In particular, that was an escape room where he wanted to turn the green room for the contestants for Game Changer into an escape room, with the premise being that they were waiting for the show to begin, and then suddenly in the space they're waiting turns into the show. So it's really, really cool because that network has some just like really, really amazing collaborators, Sam especially. And I was surprised at how willing they were to dive into like storytelling in Game Changer. It's a game show, but to me, escape rooms have to have some kind of narrative to push people forward.
Mhm.
So in really just pushing it to say like, I think we should craft a narrative and let's build some world building here, both with a network and with sort of a fictional villain. And I was surprised how very much they're like, yes, all for it. So that was really, really cool. And then after working on that process together, I was invited to join the writing team and producing team for the next season. And it was just really cool to bring that sort of creative energy to the later episodes, which was we're pitching episodes of Game Changer. And then obviously there are some formats that work really well, very traditional kind of fun games, but then some really outside the box ones. So one that I pitched that I was really proud of that we worked on was called Deja Vu, where it starts out as an episode where the questions are really hard and not very fun, where they're like really obscure trivia and tasks that they're going to have no time to complete. And then the episode ends and it loops. where it restarts. And there's sort of a narrative reason why a camera breaks. They go wait outside and then they come back in and they realize the show is looped. And that's where you realize, oh, these difficult tasks, these impossible questions, they start getting better at them. And so you can do a lot of really just interesting creative stuff with those of the environment. And then there's one called Beat the Buzzer, where they have really simple questions, but the buzzers don't work. And they have to run around the studio and find them. And so we had some really out of the box ones where, for example, there was a buzzer on the street and a camera on it and a microphone inside the studio and a TV where people would see people walking by the buzzer on the street and they had to yell in the microphone, "Hey, hit the buzzer for me." And so just creating like these weird sort of interactive elements and playing with sort of the tools of immersive production and immersive design in
Right.
sort of this game show for really out of the box sort of ideas. And it's really, about creating it sort of on two levels almost because it has to work for the players, but also has to film really well. So a lot of considerations, but again, it's really cool pushing them sort of out of the box places, and it's a joy to work with them.
Wow, I love this. So we're moving into like media and streaming, but what about movies? Have you worked on any immersive movie experiences, or how do you see movie theaters evolving and becoming more immersive, especially with the challenge of people going to the cinema these days? I mean, I have to tell you, we do have Alamo Draft House here, so I still go to the movies here in Austin because of the whole pre-show that they offer to engage the audience. But
Yeah,
for
and
the others
Alamo in LA is my preferred theater as well, so I completely understand. Yeah, I think theater curation is really interesting. I think for me, movies, interactivity and narrative is really, really interesting because I think the risk of they've tried so many examples of trying to make interactive movies a thing in theaters where you have collaborative voting, you have all these different tools that have all tried and not worked. And I think on the whole, I do love seeing a filmmaker's vision for a complete whole story. But the elements of what you do before and after, I think, are super engaging.
Yeah,
I've worked on a ton of movie promotion and adaptations, and so working with like Netflix, for example, when you're adapting IP, it the goal is, I think, with anything people want, is retreading the greatest hits of a movie or a TV show is not what people want. One, the production budget for a movie or TV show is never going to meet what an immersive production necessarily is going to have. So recreating the sets and scenes, and plus that's already been done.
yeah,
Like, do you really want to go do that? So to me, it's like, can you create a world that supports it, that isn't just like a fan fiction piece where it has no impact in the world, but it sets between seasons. It uses the performers from the show. It
mm,
feels like something that is putting you in between the seasons or in between an episode or between the movies. So I really love works that do utilize the creators, the filmmakers, the writers, the directors, the people involved in the show, and help produce this stuff. And then being able to go, for example, being able to go see a movie and then immediately after go play an escape room adaptation of it that's sort of like a sequel piece to it. And so now you've got the context of the world and have this activity to go do or thing to do that's supplemental that adds to it. So I really like that where it's like if you love a world, people just want to go be immersed in it as much as possible and being able to create that. And so in my mind, with a movie theater, there's talks of like AMC and all these big companies putting zip lines and like it's like what are you doing? Like people also love movies, so why not start putting things that are supplemental to the studio system and like complement this stuff? Like Alamo Draft House actually is really cool. They produce a lot of immersive events, so
yeah.
I've done immersive events with them, some of which I designed a series of puzzles that went along with some secret screenings they did.
So
And
fun.
the idea was we had a fake movie in that screening that was this legendary movie that sucks audience members in, and we had like 5 actor plants in the auditorium that one by one got sucked into the movie. So as more of the movie was revealed over the course of the night of the festival, people started noticing like, wait, the person next to me is now in the thing. And then by the end of it, we had this crazy like immersive activation at the end of the screening that implied that they were sucked into the movie as well. So I
Oh,
love
I
Alamo
love
because
that.
they do think about that holistically, and they have so many genre fans. It's really fun to play with them. And again, people are fans of this stuff. They want to engage with it, and I want to do something that's more than just pandering. Like giving me a T-shirt or recreating a set for a photo opportunity isn't enough. I want to make something they can play and do that supplements their experience.
Mhm. So, last question, and then I think we're gonna wrap it up, but, I think we have some LA fans here, especially from you being here and being from LA. What they're asking, what do and don't you like about the culture and landscape around immersive in LA right now? And if you wanna expand it to, like, the other major cities, by all
Yeah,
means.
I mean, every city is a different environment. I think every city has its pros and cons. With LA, the trickiest part is permitting work and finding venues. There
Yeah.
are so many amazing, talented creators in the Los Angeles, LA space, and that's what I love is that there are dozens of amazing companies and producers and creators who I'm huge fans of. And seeing them having a hard time producing work where it's not for lack of funding or not for lack of ideas, but really for a place you can safely produce work. So I think that's probably the biggest quirk of LA is that it's hard to find venues
Mm,
that are sufficient. There are a handful of places emerging that are safe spaces to design in, but that's the other danger of immersive is going to the same space, you know it. Part of
yeah.
immersive is, as we're doing site specific work, you don't have to face this in VR or AR necessarily because you can make surprising spaces in those worlds. But in real life, you're really left with the mercy of a venue. So yeah, I think LA is the space. Um, we're
That's
very
so
lucky to have
interesting
different.
because, like, last time I was there, Santa Monica looked totally dead on the 3rd, and it's like the and I see it here even in downtown Austin. There's a
Mhm.
lot of buildings that are empty because people
Yeah,
are going to hybrid. You would think that immersive experience designers would be called upon to reimagine what those venues could be for
you
community.
would think we as AOTW tried to work with a commercial real estate developer, but even working in an office space was next to impossible
Wow.
because of all the regulations they had and safety rules. And again, I am all for safety, but I think there's a middle ground when you're producing theater work and immersive work. So yeah, I think it's something that we'll always sort of wrestle with, but my hope is that people find safe venues that you can operate within. And then at large, what's also really nice about LA is we have an audience. We have people that will show up for experimental weird work. I know other cities have a hard time getting audiences to show up because they're like, what is this thing? I don't know what this is. But what I'm excited about is when you have things like escape rooms being a gateway for a lot of people to understand, oh, I kind of get what this is, and empowering other creators who are just doing other kinds of immersive work to be able to lure in audiences because there is that framework of I kind of get what this is, and being able to get people to show up with something they may not be fully comfortable with but are curious about.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you here in Austin, every immersive experience we've designed at Texas Immersive have been sold out. So there's definitely a hunger here too, and hopefully across the United States and the world, as you know, we want that personal connection. I mean, going back to involvement, I feel
Mhm.
like we don't want to be passive observers anymore. We want agency and we want choice, and we want to be involved in the stories that matter to us. So Tommy, thank you so much for participating and being immersed. We're going to post this live stream of Texas Immerse on Texas Immersive's Patreon. So sign up to be a member for free to receive more of our thought leadership on the emerging field of immersive media and experiences. And thank you to all our participants for your engaging questions and enthusiasm. Let's keep the spirit of exploration alive as we continue to push the boundaries of immersive storytelling. So we have plenty of exciting events lined up at Texas Immersive Institute. Be sure to follow our social media at Texas Immersive and follow Tommy. Tommy, what's your social media?
I don't do social media, but my website is tommyhonton.com, and you can find me there.
Okay, great. Well, we'll get you a, we'll actually just keep reposting things for you, Tommy.
Thank you. I
Um,
appreciate it.
until next time, keep exploring and creating immersive wonders. Bye, y'all.